In this video, I'm going to show you the process of using the New York State GIS Clearinghouse data site to get spatial data for a project. The first step in doing that is to search on Google so that we can find the web page of this particular data site, which is quite an impressive one, maybe one of the most impressive of any of the state data sites. Also in this video, I'll show you how to use the data, examine the data in GIS, and then share the data with classmates or colleagues using Google Drive to show that process as well. So first we'll click on New York State GIS Clearinghouse. If you're, I guess, good with geography and know your county names or your counties just by their shape, it's possible to search for data that would be located or cover a particular county, and we could do that for Monroe County. That's one way to search for data. What I like to show is other ways to search for data today, and one of them is to ask for data and get a nice drop-down menu. And the first data set that I'd like to demonstrate, and I'll be showing a variety of different types of data and a couple of different formats and a few processes so that you can get an overview. Getting data is really like a very substantial learning curve. Takes many months and years to become familiar over a long period of experimentation with how to find the data, what's the best data, how to do it quickly and stuff. But this will be a good start for you. First data set I'd like to approach is called parcels, which are the subdivisions of the land within the county or the state. A property lot, a house lot, or any other piece of land is called a parcel. And it has an owner and a size and all kinds of other stuff attached to it. What we find is there's a lot of files available to the public that are unlocked. What we find is there's a collection of all the New York State tax parcels, and there's one slight problem with that. It's in a geodatabase format, which is a little less familiar, a little harder to work with, and we don't usually take it. The major problem with this statewide collection of tax parcels is that it's only available for a small number of counties. And if we check the metadata, data about the data, we will see that only this relatively small third or a quarter of the counties of New York State have actually supplied all of the parcels as polygons with completely documented. Monroe County doesn't supply polygon boundaries of shapefiles apparently to the public. They can be had in other ways. But what we're going to use for this example, and I think what we'll use for our study this term, is what are called centroids. That is a data set in which a polygon, such as a land parcel, is represented spatially by its center point. The balance point, or the exact center of a parcel, is used to locate it. That has limitations in that you can't really see how big it is or what shape it is or what extent it is, but the information is still attached to it, and it has some value, and I think we can make good use of that. So in order to get that data set, we got to scroll around to find Monroe County. We have a choice of geodatabase or shapefile. So let's go ahead and pick our preferred format, which is a shapefile. And as you've seen before, it'll give us what's called a zip archive, the entire data set, which might be large, composed of many files. It's all globbed together into one zipped archive, which is good for transferring the data from one place to another because it's smaller and it's only one file, but it has to be unpacked. It has to be expanded and put somewhere. So let's go ahead and do that. If we double click on that, we see that this data set contains some other stuff here, which I'm not sure what it is, and what I'm after, which is the tax parcel centroids. If we click here, then shift and click to select them all. I can copy them out of the zip archive, and I can put them into my convenient stuff folder, which is located on my desktop, by saying paste. And what we'll see when this process is done is that this, even though every text parcel is geographically represented or located by only a single point, there's still a great deal of information, most of it in what's called the DBF, or the database file, which is all the attribute or information about that point. The point locations themselves are relatively compact. So let's have a look at this thing. So we'll enter ArcMap, and of course when we get a data set, an important part of the procedure is to, of course, right away look at it and judge whether it's detailed enough, whether it's current enough, whether it really contains what we think it does, whether it covers the geographic area we're interested, etc., etc., etc. And that can only be done by viewing it. So we'll click on the Add Data button, and it doesn't really show up. It won't be found until I explicitly tell the computer to go to a particular folder or a particular place to look for it. I'm going to tell it to look on my desktop, and I'm going to connect to the folder called Stuff and say OK. And one thing to warn you about is it's not a good idea to browse or look for a specific data set in the connect to folder operation. Only find the device, the flash drive, the desktop, or the folder that the data's in. Otherwise, confusing things might happen. There's the data set, and we just add. And I expect this will take quite a while to load, but it didn't, so I'm surprised. But there's a centroid point for every parcel in the county. We can look out here at the Braddock's Bay area, and it does look like collections of home lots. And these are actually home lots. We can actually look further in this, and we can see what this is actually on top of. And I suspect that these are these seem to have the configuration of residential properties. So when we see the base map, we'll know what the have an idea of what it looks like. And every parcel has, and the dot does not necessarily fall on the house, because the house might not be in the center of the parcel. So there's the data. We do have there's a new operation I can show you. That's called the Identify tool, and we can click on one of those dots and see all kinds of information about that parcel, such as the owner, the size, how they heat their house. I believe somewhere in here it tells if they use what sewer type they use, how they get their water. And those are important for a watershed study. So this seems to be a very rich collection of data regarding housing and parcels and land within the county. So I can right click on this, say zoom to layer, and zoom back to the whole county. So at this point in the lab, it's really looking like this is a really swell data set that I really want to make good use of. So the last operation for the lab that we covered, that we did on Thursday this week, is to take this really nice data set. Now that we've found it, we've curated it, so to speak, we've checked it out, now we can share it with classmates. And we'll go right ahead, and in order to share it, I have to remember where it is, and I put it in a folder called Stuff on my desktop. Very important to remember where the file went, where it got stored. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to create and this is what I mean in the lab exercise by organizing. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it Parcels, a new folder, and I'm going to put everything in that folder with the exception of the lock file. I'll explain that again. There's a lock file there because the file is currently in use. I'm just going to leave that behind, and I'm going to select, turn off the lock file, and make a copy of this parcels data inside of a folder called parcels. So what I've done now is I've just tidied up. I've organized a little bit in this. And my last step then would be to share it. And I can share it by going to this particular folder, on Google Drive, which is set up for the class, and there's data set downloaded 9/7, that was today, and there's a few things showing up already here. What I can do now is right click and say upload folder, and now I have to again track the thing down. I have to look on my desktop and find stuff. And again, so this highlights the importance and difficulty actually in organizing and keeping track of stuff. But there's a folder called parcels, and I say OK. And it's probably going to take some time to load this, but fortunately I can leave this operation to finish itself up. It's loading parcels right now, and that's 1/6 of the lab. And each person in the lab was able to needed to only download a single data set. And what's available now on Google Drive for anybody is a checked out, downloaded, and well thought of data set called parcels. Today's exercise, just to clarify again, we didn't intend to make a map. This data set isn't ready to make a map yet. So here's a map right here, and I could go right ahead and say export map. I could go to the layout view and put a title on it and such, but that's not the intention of what we learned and did today. So there's no PDF, there's no map. There's a major difference between a data set and a map product. The map product that I could create by saying export map is a snapshot. It's just the data laid up onto the screen and shown with a particular symbology and a snapshot taken. It's static, it's permanent, it's basically dead. A data set is alive. A data set can be used by somebody else to zoom in on a particular area, to symbolize in a certain way. So a data set is raw material, and a PDF is a finished product which is done. So we're not really actually done yet, because I'd like you to recall that, whoops, didn't mean to do that. I'd like you to recall that we're only interested in a portion of Monroe County. And I'm trying to eyeball it here. I think that's Hilton. So we're only interested in a portion of Monroe County from, didn't mean to do that either, from Spencerport up toward the lake where our watershed is. And this highlights or brings up the fact that we need some methodologies, we need some GIS techniques to shrink this data set, to clip it, to extract it, to chop it, to select only those parcels that are inside the data, inside the watershed. Those are the ones that we care about. You recall the fundamental principle of watershed science is that everything that's inside the watershed matters and everything outside doesn't matter. So that's a future lesson, the processes and methods for shrinking this data set so that it only includes the parcel centroids that are inside of the watershed. But that's another lesson. So that I think I'm going to reach my YouTube limit here pretty soon. So I'm going to end this video here and call it part 1. At least I hope I